Jeff Duncan, who is a great author from New Orleans, or actually he's from Louisville, but now calls home New Orleans and is a proud New Orleanian. Always great to hear him talk about the history of the city, but he's got a great relationship, obviously, with the New Orleans Saints organization. His latest book is a must-read if you're a Saints fan. Payton and Brees, the architects, the men who built the greatest offense in NFL history. You can get it if you follow Jeff Duncan on Twitter. He's at Jeff Duncan _. He's a columnist over at The Athletic and is a good friend of our show, and we welcome him back here on this Wednesday morning. Good morning, Jeff. Thanks for your time as always.
Good morning, Jordy. Great to be joining you again. Hope everything's going better for everyone in the Baton Rouge and obviously Lafayette areas after this past week.
Yes, it was Lake Charles hit again as well. It's Lake Charles is, my goodness, man, the people over there, resilient to say the least, but again, another storm comes through Southwest Louisiana. It's always good to talk to you. I was reading your latest over at The Athletic, one of them in a sit-down with Jeff Ireland, and it is an unbelievable insight to the thinking behind the Saints and their draft strategy, and breaking down just kind of some of the thoughts behind some of the selections. I love what he talked about with Ian Book, the quarterback from Notre Dame. What did you think that selection of Book said about their confidence in the position that they sit now at quarterback with Winston and Hill? And in talking to Ireland in that piece, what did you learn about the draft strategy of this New Orleans Saints team that's had so much success during that weekend over the last couple of years?
Well, Jordy, I think it really reinforced what I knew all along, and that is that the team really does follow certain prototypes. That's not just physical prototypes, height, weight, speed, but also off the field and tangible prototypes. They adhere to that. That's a Bill Parcells-ism that Jeff Ireland learned under Parcells, so did Sean Payton. And it really, when you see and hear Jeff Ireland explain what they look for in prospects, especially at certain positions, it really helps you almost eliminate certain players from consideration for the Saints, because they're not going to select outliers from their prototypes, good or bad. That doesn't mean they don't think those players will eventually be good NFL players. Just not for them. They're not for the Saints. And that, I brought this up before. A good example would be Patrick Queen, who's a great linebacker from LSU that a lot of people had slotted into the Saints 2 years ago. I knew the Saints were never going to pick him in the first round because he's not their size linebacker. He doesn't fit their prototype. He's a guy that's going to play in more of a 3-4 scheme. Those are the kind of things you can see when you hear Jeff Ireland talk about what they look for in players. And Ian Book, in particular, is a guy that doesn't really fit quite their prototype. That's why he goes in the 4th round. They will take players outside of their prototype, but they will be downgraded, and they would take them at a later spot in the draft. And I think those things all came out in that interview.
I mean this with all due respect towards Ireland. How do the Saints still have him?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. He was a target for the Carolina Panthers this year for the general manager job. He's only going to leave, though, Jordy, in a good position. He was the general manager in Miami, and it didn't work out very well. He loves his position with the Saints. It really is a unique situation. I mean, Jeff, coming from scouting background, really fits like a glove into the Saints brain trust alongside Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton. Mickey Loomis came up from the business operations side of an organization in Seattle. That's not his strength, is not scouting players. And I think it's a real testament to Mickey Loomis that he's willing to bring in a guy like Jeff Ireland, who's a very strong voice, a very powerful guy, and bring him into the organization knowing that it will help the organization. But let's face it, a lot of other people in that position would be intimidated by that. Yeah. And Mickey Loomis doesn't feel that. And I think it's been a huge benefit to the organization since they got Jeff Ireland in. The proof's in the pudding in their ability to draft.
Jeff, you've seen nearly every day of the Sean Payton and Drew Brees relationship, both professionally and you've got access to it personally. What do you expect this to look like for the Saints as they move on without him?
I'm really eager to see it. To be honest with you, I think it's going to be fascinating. We're talking a decade and a half, 15 years. They've not had to worry about the quarterback position. They've had a Hall of Famer there, not just taken care of. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest players in NFL history. They're going to find out a little bit what the other half lives like. I mean, the entire league is made up of teams that have franchise quarterbacks and everyone else is looking to get the franchise quarterback. And the Saints now are in that latter half. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they negotiate and navigate those waters. And I think it says a lot that that Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill only have one-year deals, basically. That's telling you all you need to know what the organization thinks long-term. They're not committed to either one of them long-term. This is a transition year, a prove-it year for both of them, and they could be back in the quarterback market a year from now, even with Ian Book, who's a prospect they like, but let's face it, no one is sure what his NFL future is either.
Jeff Duncan from The Athletic. You can find him on Twitter at @JeffDuncan_. He's also the author, as we said, of Payton and Brees, the men who built the greatest offense in NFL history. Is the schedule a testimony to the respect that the NFL has for the roster outside of Drew Brees, just with the primetime games that they were awarded going into the season? Does that tell you all you need to know about the Saints roster going into the year?
I think it says a lot about it. I also think it speaks to the popularity of the Saints. The profile has changed in the organization dramatically since Sean Payton and Drew Brees came in. I wrote about that a lot in the book. That's, I think, the greatest part of their legacy is they changed the perception and culture of that entire organization. That's very difficult to do in football. It's easier to do in basketball, like the Golden State Warriors, when you get a transcendent talent like Steph Curry. One or two players can do it quickly in basketball, but in football, a numbers sport, it's hard to do that with one player, and it certainly was more than just Drew Brees, but alongside Sean Payton, what they did to raise the profile, to make them among the most popular teams in the NFL from being a bottom feeder for so long, I think is a great legacy to have.
You talked a lot about the Saints drafting off a prototype, and I think Payton Turner kind of fits that bill. Is this a two-part question in terms of, does he fit the prototype? Because I think he does. But then is this a detriment on Marcus Davenport and his development?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think Payton Turner is exactly what they look for in a defensive end. Jeff Ireland talked about that. They don't want I think he even used the designation, we don't want a Dwight Freeney type. In other words, that goes back to prototype. They don't like the smaller edge rushers. The kid from Georgia, I think, was a good example this year. Ogunzolari was not going to be a Saint. They want these taller guys like a Marcus Davenport because of the way they play defense. They're very much a stout defensive end, be able to play the run, set the edge. They're going to rush that edge and bend it back with power more than speed when they rush the passer. And so he fit everything they like. And you could tell by listening to Jeff Ireland, they think higher of this prospect than other teams in the league. And we're going to find out who's right in the end. But I think it just shows that their adherence to not going outside of the prototype, because there's a famous saying, I think it was Tom Landry, that said, you can take exceptions here or there to your draft philosophy, but you don't want to end up with a team full of exceptions. And I think that Payton Turner's selection was a good example of that.
And I have another follow-up question for the draft. We go Payton Turner in the second round. The Saints go Payton Turner in Pete Werner in the second round, excuse me. And have you ever seen, I might be too close to it just because I follow the Saints, but have you ever seen an Ohio State to an NFL or any NFL like college pipeline like the Saints have with Ohio State?
No, it's really unique. And Jeff Ireland addressed that too. He likes players like that. He likes players from Ohio State for the same reasons you would like SEC players, I think, and that is they get challenged daily in practice because of the talent level. They're prepared almost like an NFL team. He has a lot of respect, I know, for their strength and conditioning program. So all those things add up to an easy transition to the NFL. A lot of it, I think, is happenstance, just because they end up with the prospect in a need fit each year. but also I think it speaks to the respect level he has for the entire program. And we see that at LSU. I mean, look how many players LSU puts into the NFL. I know they haven't put a lot into the Saints organization, but I think a lot of that comes down to the draft, the roll of the dice, like I said, with fit and need.
Jeff, who do you think the top priority is to get signed next for New Orleans?
Oh, there's no question they've got to get a cornerback. I mean, they're not going to go into this season with this cornerback depth chart right now. They've got to get a starting corner. How they get it, I don't know. I think they're going to explore the trade market. I think they're going to explore free agency. But it won't be Paulson Adebo or Patrick Robinson starting when the Saints line up against the Green Bay Packers in their opener. There'll be somebody else there starting. I feel pretty confident about that.
How about long-term deal on the roster now? Ramczyk or Lattimore or anybody else outside of those two?
Well, those are deals that I think they both want to pursue and get done, and that could open up a long-term extension to either one or both. Opens up the cap room to make a deal for a corner. And so I think you'll see that domino fall once they identify a target in the cornerback market and can bring it in. They've got room under the cap by making those extensions. And I know Ramczyk is their top priority right now.
No way the NFL did the Saints the favor on the scheduling with the Jazz Fest alignment, right? I mean, that was just a coincidence, right? I mean, this would be the first favor we've seen Madison Avenue do New Orleans if that happened.
Yeah, look, I talked to some TV executives who said that the league will do that. If you make a request for something, you've got something in town like Jazz Fest, it makes sense, right? Yeah. I mean, now if you're a Saints fan or a Jazz Fest fan, you don't have that difficult decision to make. Do I want to go to the game on Sunday or do I want to go see Trombone Shorty close down Jazz Fest on the last weekend? They cleared the path for that. That definitely was by design. And I tell you, Mike Norris, the guy, the schedule maker for the NFL, if you ever listen to any interviews with him and listen to how they put together that schedule, it is fascinating. And they go out of their way to try and help the teams. But we all know the number one priority of the schedule is to maximize revenue, to get the best games in front of as many eyeballs as they can. That's the top priority. Then they try to, I think, eliminate as much pain as they can from their teams and travel and things like that. But I think this year, for the most part, guys, I thought the Saints' schedule was pretty manageable. I didn't feel like they had any really major complaints with how it was put together. Now they just got to go play it.
When the NFL also added a game to the schedule, and the Saints have a bye week, I think week 6, if I'm not mistaken, do you think that there's a possible avenue to add an extra bye week? Because it seems pretty intense for the NFL guys.
Well, I think what will end up happening eventually is there's going to be 18 games and there will be 2 bye weeks. So this schedule and this NFL season is going to grow. Now they're going to eliminate one of the preseason games. So we're going to end up with 2 preseason games, 18 regular season games, and 2 byes during the regular season to address obviously obvious, and that is the player safety. And to get there, guys, it's going to take some concessions from the owners. We're going to have to expand the rosters. We're also going to have some concessions from the head coaches in how they manage a game and play a game. There's no reason why you can't sub in a few offensive linemen and get backup lineman reps during a game. I mean, these NFL coaches act like that's heresy to play a backup at certain positions because it's the NFL and players are paid. It's different from college. I get that. But we're going to see a lot of conventional wisdom go out the window to get to this 18-game schedule. And I think it's going to be for the better in the long run because the fans are going to get more bang for their buck on their season tickets.
I renewed my my athletic subscription this morning. It came through and saw that it shot through my my automatic draft, and it's one of the great reads that you go to for sourcing and anything, whether it be the NFL. You got writers like Jeff Duncan talking about the New Orleans Saints. I love following Bruce Feldman and Brody Miller talking about LSU college football, and you can find all types of talented authors at the Athletic, including Jeff Duncan. We appreciate it as always, Jeff. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. A little quick tease. Next week, your listeners will want to check out the Athletic. I got a big profile coming up on Arch Manning and his recruitment, which will certainly be of interest to LSU fans.
All right, talk to you next week.
Let's see if we can't rebook you next week to talk about that the day after it launches. Yes, please.
Let's do it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yes, sir. There is Jeff Duncan checking in.